reason to hate Esau. This is Red Summer, the race riots of 1919, which wasn't that long ago. What was it? 1919. That's 105 years ago. Um, I tell brothers and I tell people. I actually knew my great grand. I knew. I've seen my great grandmother, and so this is not long ago. This is Lord's will I can find more. How you say occurrences of Esau's hatred. Esau tries to get rid of things like this. It's crazy because it's actually a Jake who showed me this. So this is American servicemen return from the First World War only to find a new type of violent conflict waiting for them at home. And this is Jake. One thing Esau always did, he never kept his end of the bargain. He would promise and tell Jake he was going to do certain things to get ahead, to help him out. So basically, like the scripture said, never trust thine enemy, even though he hideth his wickedness, roughly paraphrasing. So it says, an outbreak of racial violence known as the Red Summer occurred in 1919, an event that affected at least 26 cities across the United States. Racial tensions across the U.S. were exacerbated by the discharge of millions of military personnel back to their homes and domestic lives following the end of the war. Competition for opportunities in post-war America combined with the radically changed social landscape placed whites, Edomites, and blacks, so-called so-called blacks, which is of the tribe of Judah, in conflict with one another, leading to tragic results. World War I intensified the Great Migration, the mass immigration of so-called African Americans from the rural South to the industrial North and Midwest in hopes of escaping the poverty and discrimination of Jim Crow laws. By the summer of 1919, approximately 500,000 so-called African Americans had resettled in northern cities. In many cases, northern whites, many of them newly arrived immigrants themselves, did not welcome so-called black newcomers. That's a photography right there. So when the war ended, many returning servicemen resented that their vacated jobs had been taken, particularly by so-called African Americans. So-called black laborers already suffered from a negative reputation in the white working community for their use as low-wage earning strike breakers or scabs, who will keep factories in operation while the employees went on strike. The situation was made worse in the aftermath of the Russian Revolution of 1917. Many officials and others with little or no evidence suspected black workers of being pawns of Bolsheviks and anarchists. Many whites feared that the return of tens of thousands of black veterans with experience living abroad and, more significantly, having received military training would be unwilling to resubmit to traditional political and social subjugation in the U.S. So many black leaders encouraged returning servicemen to assert themselves and fight for the dignity and respect they had earned through their military service. W.E.B. Du Bois famously called upon black veterans to not simply return from fighting, but to return fighting. Many black veterans were mistreated and in some cases attacked while in uniform. Lynchings increased from 64 in 1918 to 83 in 1919. And a lot of times the numbers be fabricated. Really, it'd be more. Memberships in the revived Ku Klux Klan were born after D.W. Griffith's 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation, skyrocketed to the millions by the early 1920s. Another image. So most violent incidents during the Red Summer of 1919 were not initiated by French white supremacist terror groups. Ordinary so-called white civilians and veterans unaffiliated with the Ku Klux Klan or any other racist organization formed most of the mobs. So it's not, so your little neighbor of yours you know, particularly now, those they didn't like our people. They didn't like Judah. They didn't like you so-called blacks here in America. They try to make this little notion now. Oh, white supremacist groups or the Ku Klux Klan. Nah, it's your it's your so-called average Edomite, because these average Edomites don't like the fact that Jake is getting up. Looks like they're doing good. But see, they don't understand. These Edomites don't really understand that their own government, their own people, their own top elites are fucking them over too. So really, Esau, you really need to be getting at your own people. But unfortunately, that's what Esau does. Instead of really, taking out his anger on his own people, because hey, you've been duped. You're not getting your piece of the pie. What they do, they take it out on Jake. So that's why majority of these Edomites that's in your top positions in these companies, your managers, your CEOs, your supervisors, deep down inside, they really don't like your black ass. But it's a certain way they have to portray themselves. Well, on the workforce and in everyday, walking around in society. But deep down inside, they're just waiting. They're just waiting for their chance to put their hands on you. Deep down inside, they probably have their own little black dark web. Showing their hatred, etc. They probably want to eat sick fetishes for the so-called black woman, which they all fall for. So really, when the black woman talks about, she wants to go outside and date the so-called white man, hey, that's why you have any so-called white men, recently getting with the nigger woman, the American nigger woman, and he's getting rid of her. He's offing her. I'm gonna hurry up too. I got a bad toothache. Um, Shit came out of nowhere. So it says many of the dozens of incidents that occurred over the course of the year were made far worse because local, state, and federal officials hesitated in taking action or turned a blind eye to the violence. Racial violence broke out in some of the nation's most popular cities. A 4-day riot in Washington, D.C. began on July 19th when a rumor that black men had assaulted a white woman incited mobs to attack local black neighborhoods and assault random so-called African American individuals on the streets. Off-duty sailors and recently discharged Army veterans led the mobs. When the local police were overwhelmed by the mayhem, Washington's black community banded together to fight back, arming themselves with bats, clubs, pistols, and knives. Soon, black mobs were attacking white passersby just as indiscriminately as whites did the blacks. In nearby Norfolk, VA, a parade celebrating the return of a unit of African American troops from Europe turned into a bloody melee, and 2 black servicemen were killed. Ultimately, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson had to order troops to secure the streets. I'm gonna actually look that up. Woodrow Wilson and racial riots. Washington was closely followed by a massive race riot in Chicago. Rioting erupted on July 27 when a black teenager drowned after being hit with stones when he and friends drifted near a de facto whites-only beach. Violent rioting across Chicago's south and west sides and into the downtown lasted days. Eventually, the state militia was deployed to restore order. Though records vary, the final Chicago casualty count listed 38 fatalities, 23 black, 15 whites, 537 injured, and upwards of 1,000 so-called black families were made homeless by the burning and rampant destruction of so-called African American neighborhoods. Likely the single deadliest incident of the Red Summer occurred in and around Elaine, Arkansas on September 30 and October 1st. After a white law officer was killed in a shootout outside a so-called black sharecropper gathering, Governor Charles Breaux ordered 500 Army soldiers from nearby Camp Pike to march on a lane and put down what was labeled an insurrection among the black sharecroppers. Estimates vary as to how many so-called African Americans were killed, but upwards of 200 are believed to have lost their lives. It's impossible to say exactly how many people were killed or injured in the race riots and lynchings of the Red Summer of 1919. Official records for some incidents were poor or never documented. We know that hundreds of people lost their lives, thousands were injured, and many more were forced to flee their homes. Yet one legacy of 1919 was the growing confidence and desire to fight back in the streets. See that? So Jake, pretty much got sick and tired, man. Because and that's why now it's even worse because instead of Jake realizing and fighting, Jake I'm gonna just get that. Never trust that enemy. Cause see, Esau act like he's your friend. Going. The build up, and it says it. The build up of the civil rights, and then the communist party. That Malcolm X and Martin Luther King was put into to pretty much make you niggas one with society, so you can pretty much be used and abused for the New World Order. For in the streets and in the courts and in the voting booth for so-called African American communities across the country. The Red Summer saw black populations fight back aggressively against racial violence and intimidation in ways that were not typical before. See that? Because during those times, the so-called blacks in America knew that the so-called white man was a devil and he was your enemy. And it's still even like that, even to this day, even worse. Because now the so-called black man and woman think the so-called white man are their friends. The Red Summer of 1919 did not intimidate African Americans into submission, as their tormentors had hoped. Instead, so-called African Americans emerged from the violence of that bloody year with a greater sense of shared purpose, identity, and pride. Saw that? See that? So, instead of us, so at one point we didn't riot and turn against each other like you see today. But see, this is propagandally going into those snares and those traps that Esau set up for us. And that's why you have the gang banging, so much black on black crime, the dysfunction, the black woman fighting against the so-called black man and talking about she don't need him. Because ultimately this was all by design. So it says, so when at one time, so that during these times, Jake was together. And also going into the 1960s, where it was so confident, it had Northern Kingdom siding with Judah, and Issachar and Gad. You had the Native Americans war going on, which served as a vital foundation for the civil rights movement to come. So let me get that. Never trust thine enemy. Which we try to tell Jake today. But Jake don't listen. Jake believed Esau loves them. Let me get this in. Let me see if I can get this in a GNT. So, Sirach 12 and 10 in the GNT. Never trust an enemy. His wickedness is as destructive as rust. Watch out and be on guard against him, even if he acts ever so humble. He is like a metal mirror that rusts away if you don't keep it polished. Seat an enemy at your right hand, and the next thing you know, he'll be trying to get your own place of honor. And it's to the point where he took our identity, and now he's called himself the children of the Bible, the children of Israel, the so-called the JEW. So it says then you Salaki, put him next to you and he will overthrow you, and that's what Esau does. And see, that's why it's even worse today, because now Jake really believed that being close, being next, being honorable, trying to be peaceful, and trying to be a good friend and be a good person to the devil. He thinks he's just gonna look him as we're all equal, all so-called human beings. Nah, this man's a devil. He's going to look to overthrow you and keep you in straits. Then you will realize the truth of my words and be stung with regret when you remember them. Nobody feels sorry for snake charmers or wild animal tamers who get bitten. And nobody will feel sorry for you if you run around with sinners and get involved in their wrongdoing. An enemy will stay with you for a while, but not when trouble comes. He will speak fine words while he plots how to trap you. He will pretend to share your sorrows, but he will kill you if he gets a chance. If trouble comes your way, you will find him waiting, ready to trip you up while he pretends to help you. He will be a different person than rubbing his hands, nodding his head, and spreading rumors about you. And that's what the so-called white man does. And also going into Ezekiel, I believe 38, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on. I might have to cut this short. My damn tooth is killing me. It's in Ezekiel, it said that perpetual hatred that you had towards Judah. I'm gonna go ahead and I gotta wrap this up, man. My fucking tooth is killing me. Shalom.